Welcome to the April, believe it or not, don't look outside, but the April edition of Kansas City Woodturners. And certainly thank you all for coming tonight. Despite the weather, it's supposed to be spring. Anyway. Whiteout conditions yesterday is unbelievable. Anyway, have we got any first-time visitors with us? I know we have a number of people here. We've even got people from China that have come here for this meeting tonight. So this has been incredible. And we've got guests and guest presentations. So first-time visitors? Yes. Well, there's Mark and your name, sir? Dan. How'd you find us? Oh, Effie. Everybody knows Effie. Yeah. Great. Thanks for coming. Anybody else? Yeah, Horace. And you're from up in Smithville? Great. You came with Mark tonight, so good. Thank you for coming. Anyway, new members. We normally have a couple new members every meeting, but maybe not. Okay. What I want to do is just go over the agenda with you tonight real quick, what we're going to do. We're going to start off with our demonstration by Jerry McMaster, which is a real treat for all of us. And then we have a guest presentation by Mark Soleil, who is here. And then we'll have some just brief announcements. We'll take a break for some refreshments and our silent auction items. You have a chance to take a look at all the items back there and bid early and often. It all goes for a great cause. Then we will do the challenge, which is a tool handle, a lathe tool handle. We've got a full table over there. And then wrap up with a show and tell. And the goal is to be out of here by 9 o'clock, but we may run a little late tonight. So anyway, without any further ado, I tell you, this is quite a treat for us to be able to introduce Mr. Jerry McMaster, who is a very accomplished, experienced wood-turning artist. And he is going to show us how to make captive spheres. And in about an hour, I think most everybody in the room here is going to be singing, goodness gracious, great balls of fire. And you'll know what that means here in a little bit. But take it away, Jerry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before I start, first I have a giveaway. If some of you might be interested in these, when I carry tools in a bag, sometimes I sharpen them before I come, and then the ends get beat up, and so I have these that slip on, and you can put a piece of tape around the bottom to keep them on, and then you can transport them without them getting beat up. So if you would like some of these, I've got 5 left, and one of these does about 4 or 5 tools, depending on how short you cut it. So they're right here. After the demo, come up and pick them up. These were, my wife ordered a gallery hanging system. You hang pictures, and the metal rods came in these, and I said, don't throw those away. I know what I can use them for. So you can only use so many, then you're tripping over them in your shop. So there you go. Many of you know my wife, and she's been very supportive. I started turning in 2001, and she supported me all the way. And she's always looking for things to improve my demonstrations and my wood turning. And she recognized that often when I turn, I wear a hat. I do that so that during the overhead shots, you don't see the scars I collected when I was a kid from falling from trees, crashing my bike, throwing rocks, those cool things we did. And so I wear a hat, but when I turn, I usually turn it backwards so that when the overhead shot comes on, you can see something besides the bill of my hat. But she made something really cool. She came up with all these turning scarves for me, and so I have floral design. I have baseball. I've got musical instruments for when I turn my great balls of fire over here. I've got the fall corn, and I've got patriotic for the 4th of July. Anyway, tonight I've decided to choose the floral design because I have such a flowery disposition, so give me a second. See if I can get this on without a mirror. Now, I have to tell you, the other day I was wearing this in the shop, and I came in for lunch, and when I sat down, the doorbell rang, and I answered the door. It was a UPS guy, and he looked kind of odd at me, and I said, "Sons of Anarchy." You know what he said? Well, first he pulled out a device. Thank you. He pulled out a device that looked like a taser, and that's when I said, "Sons of Anarchy," and he says, "Sure, sign here." So I signed it, and I thought, disrespect. You can't disrespect the colors, you know. But I went ahead and signed because I wanted the package, but now, beside my door, I put my 7/8 bowl gouge just beside my front door for when he comes back. This was one of the first tools I bought that was going to make me great. But I haven't used it. I bought it in 2001. Nobody's asked me to turn a half-scale replica of the Kemper Arena, so I don't know what to turn with that big beast, but it makes you feel like a Viking when you hold it, so it's great, great tool. But I digress. My topic is the captured ball. And some of you have already seen my Great Balls of Fire representation, and this goes with it. I also have this one that I turned out of ambrosia maple that some of you have seen. And I've got a couple other samples that I'm going to pass around. And to help some of you as you watch this demo, if you're like me, halfway through the demo you're going to think, now have I seen this before? Let me give you a hint. Jason Clark. He was here just 2 months ago, and he did the Saturn bowl. This is the Saturn bowl without the bowl. Instead of a bowl, it's a sphere. So that's the only difference. You've had 2 months to perfect that, and I see there's a couple samples of that over here, so somebody else should probably be doing this demo. But as a disclaimer, if you notice that I'm doing something different than Jason did, there's always more than one way to do it. But if you ask yourself, now should I do it Jerry's way or Jason's way, do it Jason's way. He's done a lot more of these than I have, so I'm not proud. So do that. First I want to show some of the things that I've used this for. You see this. I'm going to pass this around, and if you have one that you turn that looks like it's out of this world, where's the camera? Right there. You can either put it on a moon rock or a manzanita burl, whichever you have laying around in your shop. So I'll pass that around. You can look at it. Now, like many of you, I had to go through a progression. I turned this and I separated the ball with just a parting tool. I thought, well, that's really neat, until I saw Jason's demo, and then I realized, ooh, I need to mount a razor blade on a stick for a tool so I can cut that thing off. And so I filed my tool down quite a bit, and I've been doing some boxes, and so I came up with these, and that's the captured sphere. Someone, I forget who I showed this to, and they said, I'm curious, how did you do that? And so these have become curiosity boxes. Curious on the outside and curiosities on the inside. So when you look at this, I know we're all wood turners, and the first thing wood turners do is turn it over and look at the bottom. I don't know why. We look at the bottom, we look on the inside. Yeah, exactly. I don't know why when we look at paintings we don't look in the back and see if they put the stretchers in correctly or if they sanded the back of the wood frame. We probably do. So what I'm saying is, when you look at this, because it's a loose fitting lid, hang on to the lid, because if you turn it over and don't, it's going to hit the floor and break. So curiosity box.
Jerry, you should put a price on that box now before we pass it.
I'm going to wait to see if it happens, then I'll tell you the price. And then I couldn't stand to doing one without color, and so I made this one with a little bit of color. Here it comes. Woo. And I had a plank in my shop. If you notice on that one, if you turn the ball on that first one made out of walnut, I thought that was really dry walnut, but the ball started to go oval, and if you look at the top, you can tell it went oval a little bit. So I found this old plank I had. I didn't really know what it was, and I think it's birch because I cut it up and looks like birch to me, unless one of you tree guys says different, then I'll believe whatever you tell me. So anyway, the back side, you'll want to read what's on the back side, but curiosity box. So I'm going to get right to the turning because we have a lot going on today. And I want to show you first the layout. I'm going to use, this is a piece of that birch. And I'm going to turn this into steps because it takes more than an hour for me to do these things. But the layout, I use a carpenter's square. You don't have to use a carpenter's square. You could do the same thing with a ruler. But what I do is put that square like this. I take my best shop pencil, that's off of a lead tree, a limb, and you come up to a corner and draw an angle. This is a 45 just because of the nature of the square, like so. Do the same thing on the other side. And again, if you don't have a square, you can use a ruler. Just make sure the lines are the same length so you get the same angle. This square has degrees marked on it, so I'm going to put a mark on the same, it says 20 degrees. I'm going to put it there. I'm going to put 20 degrees over here. But it's just putting a mark so that it's parallel. And this way it'll get it square to the lathe when I mount it, if I did it right. I had one of those fancy owls like Kent has that you just push the button and it clicks down there. But I took it somewhere and somebody liked it better than I did, I guess, because I don't have it anymore. So, oh, the one other thing you need to put besides the points where you're going to mount it, let's see if that lined up right. Yes, it did. You want to draw a center line. And so, let's see. This shows a 1.5 inches, so 7/8 ought to do it. You don't? How about years ago? Yeah. I'm sorry. It's 1 3/4. Why 7/8 didn't come out right? It's 1 3/4 and 7/8 would do it, right? That's why it didn't come out right. I couldn't read it. Is that right, Kent? 7/8, 1 3/4. Yes, yes, it is. Yeah. I used to tell the kids I was just seeing if you were on your toes, and you were. Good job. Now, I've found in demonstrations a lot of times you feel like you're really not used to the lathe, which is true. But what I found more than the lathe, it's your tool rest you're probably not accustomed to. So I brought my own tool rest, which makes it easier if you demonstrate. You might think about that next time you're up. What we're going to try to do, and I'm only going to do part of this because after you see the first steps, well, then it gets a little bit boring, but you're going to turn basically a cylinder, and your wood, after you get the cylinder, is going to hopefully turn out flat with as few tool marks as you can possibly get. Now, My name would be Stuart Battery if I didn't have to use any sandpaper when I'm finished, but you do have to sand when you're finished to get your tool marks out. The other thing you want to do is determine what your diameter of your ball is going to be when you're done. And I brought some calipers, I hope. No, not yet. If you look at this on the top where I'm putting these calipers, I know from experience that the point of this is going to go in not quite a quarter of an inch, and so is this by the time we're done, because you have to keep tightening it up. I didn't mention my my drive. I brought my own drive as well, and this was a safety drive. I took a file and I filed 3 notches in the safety drive, so it's not so safe anymore. But it does make a real small drive that way, and it doesn't just keep spinning on me, so that's what I use. Anyway, I'm going to use that as my diameter and hope that I set it right so I don't have a hole in the tip of my sphere when I'm done. Now, famous last words, I've never had one of these come off. And you have to set, you want to use as much speed as you can without the lathe walking across the floor. And I'm telling you guys it's not going to come off, but I'm wearing this, so there you go. Now, what you know? Does that sound like a cave now? Okay, the trick is I've set this so it's parallel. Now the trick is, I can see that center line, it's kind of a shadow. And this is a lesson in keeping your hand on the right side of the tool rest. When I finish these, I like to celebrate, because if I have all my digits and my faces in one piece, I know it turned out okay. You're getting nervous, right? Come on, baby. What's the story on that? Anybody know? What is the deal here? We have a trick lathe. There goes my... Hold it. That's forward reverse. Where's the on-off switch? Right there. Dang. Learn your tool before you start, I guess. I thought that was the on-off switch. It was reverse switch. Damn. Well, that's all right. If that's all it screws up, we're good. See, the light works great too. That's all right. The trick is when you turn this, keep your cuts as parallel as you can to that center line. And if you notice it's getting a little wide right here, you can catch it on the next pass, or you can use a pull stroke like this to straighten some parts out. I also sometimes use that if I've got some severe tool marks when I finish to smooth off that surface. Some of you also know the reason I like this tool rest, I can get, when I'm going, I use my thumb to keep this tool from slipping in, because when you're turning the air, your tool wants to go in there, whereas when you get down here, you're on the bevel. But here you're turning more air than wood. That's why you need speed. Come on, baby. You're tempted to stop that like you do with something around. Don't do that. And you can see that I've got a raised spot here, just from flinching a little. Again, to even that up, you can do it with the next stroke, or you can come back like this. Anyway, it's a matter of turning until you get that down to about 1/8 of an inch thick. To do the back side, you just turn from the back. close as you can. You want to get this so that these are even. Come on, baby. The reason that's catching is two reasons. That's a little dull because I forgot to sharpen it. I've got one that's sharper. And I'm taking too big of bites to try to hurry up. Come on. Whoa. Anyway, I like to keep them pretty parallel as I go. If you get them too far out, it's really hard to get those back in there. And you can see, basically, you work down again until you've got it to about 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to stop there because after a while that gets boring. Keep going back and forth until you've got something then that looks like this. The nice thing about this drive, because you've got the two center points always there, you're not using a chuck or anything. You can remount your pieces and they come out in pretty good shape. Now what I've done, I've set that so that I've got the same dimension this way as I do this way, because when I turn the ball, I want that to be the top of the ball on both sides. Unfortunately, I can't use the formula for using a ball because I've got this in the way I can't measure up here like you would if you're making a sphere normally. And then the next trick is to figure out, well, what do I use to get in there? And the easiest thing I've found is a skew. I'm just going to use this side first. Don't quite need that much speed. Do need to raise that just a little bit. And so making the sphere becomes more of a scraping operation. No, I just started this side because that's where my tool rest already was. Doesn't make any difference. You'll find it's easier over here just because this isn't in the way. But you might as well do the hard side first, and then that really feels easy. No. Just the thing I find most difficult is when I'm done getting them both to match up, because you tend to make one a little, especially on this side, tend to get it a little flatter than the other. And the only answer I have for that is just practice. I suppose these guys that do these types of demonstrations all the time, they work on one project till they have it perfected, and then you think, oh, that's pretty easy, I can do it. And then you go back to your shop and find out it's not that easy. But the problem is, you know, using a spindle gouge or something, you can't. You're going to get hit in the knuckles with this thing that's turning around here. For a spindle gouge to come down and around there, you're going to be over here, and that's going to be a problem. So, I mean, you can use a spindle gouge coming uphill if you want to get in there, and I do occasionally. You could do that probably, as long as you keep it over here. But whatever works. If that's easier, I'd say go for it. Now, oddly enough, the first one I did was that big one over there. I don't know how I survived it, because that baby was really twirling around. And luckily, on my first try, it came out okay. I just didn't know to make my tool so narrow like Jason does. Anyway, you'll find the more of these to do, the better you are at making a sphere. You have to remember the center diameter is the center of that board, not out here. And so then when you realize it's a little long this way, you take a little more off, and then all of a sudden it's flat on one side. So you have to be careful. Obviously, you're going to do the same on this side. You wind up with these two nubs, and you either have to sand those nubs off or take your carving knife and take those off, because I don't rechuck it. I don't have any way to hold it when I do it between centers like this. So you work on the opposite side until you have a nice sphere. Yeah. Let me take it out and you can see it. Okay, yeah, here we go. I just took a file and I filed 3 notches, and that just makes it hold a little bit better. It's still fairly safe. I mean, it'll slap your hand and it'll hurt, but it won't take your whole hand off. So it's not quite as safe as it used to be, but it makes a nice little chuck that way. Okay, I worked on both sides. And again, everybody that watched Jason's demo knows how to cut the ball loose. It's the same as doing the Saturn bowl. And I just used an old tool. This, I think, was a great neck tool, and I didn't quite get as thin as a Gillette, but I got pretty thin. So that works a lot better, and that's what I did those 2 boxes with this tool after I narrowed it down. Now the nice thing about this, you've got that center line on your piece up here, and so you can look first and see just how deep you might need to go to cut that. And you can kind of, before you stick it in there, you can visualize how deep your tool needs to go. And if you don't trust your visual memory, you could either even take a black marker, a small one, and put a little dot on there. When you do that, though, after 3 or 4 of them, you got a tool that's got all kinds of black dots on it, and you don't know which one to look at anyway. So yes. What? What? Were you worried? And for this, you can turn the speed down so you don't break the tip off your tool. Roll. Back this up a bit. That should be it, but it's not. Almost. It's going to make me go back to the other side. There it moved. Now, the last thing I do, I try to narrow these down as much as possible because when you start sanding something that big off of the nub, it's a little tough. So usually use a spindle gouge. I don't know why. That's just what I use. Whoa. Maybe. That's about as small as you're going to get that. This one's a little tougher because it's hard to rest your tool on the end of get it in there. You can't turn this too far or this might come around and hit it. And that's about all you're going to get off that too because of the size of that drive. Now, I've seen some people that have a smaller drive than that. Yeah, exactly. And that would work great for that. Yeah. But I used what I had. You can. You can. You've got two center points. The only thing is, it's always just a whisker off. And so then you're always redoing the ball, and by the time you're done, the ball that started this size winds up that size. You know how in shop you started with a gun cabinet and wound up with a jewelry box, you know. That's one of those. I don't know. Got an A though. It's like in pool, you know, any ball, any pocket, any ball, whatever it was. Yeah, I meant to bring I even sharpen my pocket knife. I have a knife that you can about shave with, and I just shave that off. And then I use, Anthony told us this trick on some other project, 80 grit sandpaper. I thought it was illegal to use that stuff. I had a whole big roll of it. And I'm glad you said okay, Anthony, because shoot, when you come out of your shop, nobody knows anyway. And believe me, 80 grit, sometimes you don't even have to use a knife because, no, I'd cut my finger. And actually, with 80 grit, if you can go with the grain, it doesn't leave the sanding marks like on the platter where I had to sand for 3 hours to get the 80 grit sand marks out. Actually, it wasn't that bad. That's, yeah, I know. Anyway, if you zoom in on that, you can get that down pretty quick with 80 grit. See, get that nub off. Yeah, I do. Why did you look at that? Shh. Damn. Yeah, I went in too deep. Normally, I don't know what my tool was biting. I had to keep tightening that at home. I don't know why, but it didn't seem to do that. So you just have to leave. You'd have to be a little deeper on your deals. But yeah, I went too deep, and so what I'd probably do, so that people wouldn't know that I did that by accident, is I'd leave that nub on there so I could set it flat, take it over to the drill press and drill a hole, and then I'd put a finial in there. And then when I made my box, that's where you put your ring, right on that finial, see? And then people think I did it on purpose. What? Yeah. Oh, so that it couldn't. Yeah. So it just leaves a ring on the point of your thing. Yeah, I'm glad you noticed that. Thanks for pointing that out. Wait a minute. Where's that big tool I brought? Right here. What else do you want to comment on? Yes. No, but they'd work great too. They really would. And they would, yeah, if you want to go to that trouble. But yeah, cup chucks work good. I was too lazy to make a cup chuck. I don't know. But yeah. Yes. That's true. Vacuum chuck. Give it a shot. There's all kinds of ways to do it, no doubt. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Exactly. You can do that. Right. I've got a small belt sander, a vertical one that I've just gone up to and done that sometimes. But anyway, that's it. The captive sphere. There I am. Let's just do something captive, whether they be captive rings, captive spheres, satellite bowls. Turn something that's captive. Okay. You could make one of these scarves. You'll get if you step outside, you'll get a letter from your homeowners association reminding you that only 3 cycles in a group, and keep the noise down. But yeah, okay.
Well, there you have it then.
Thanks.
That's the challenge for next month. Captive ring, captive sphere, captive something on like that. Anyway, thank you again, Jerry. Really appreciate this. It's always always a pleasure to have you come and enlighten us. Yeah. Well, up next, to keep things moving here, we have let's see, Mark, you're from out of town, more than 50 miles away, and a professional. If you had a briefcase or something, you would be like a consultant. Anyway, we have a special guest presentation here. Mr. Mark Soleil has come over from Smithville, actually by way of St. Louis. He's been all over. And is here to talk with us about revolutionary new adhesives. No odor, no/low odor. Anyway, I will let him take it away.
Thank you.
Oh.
Thank y'all for
stick that on here. Wait a minute. Let me get my. Messed up.
Let's see, I wish I had a joke I could tell you or something here.
Can everybody hear me? Okay, let me get a number 2 jar here real quick. Here we go. Here we go. If anybody has heard about me, I've been kicking around for about 17 years in this wood turning business. I am known for my wood slicing. That's what, if you go to YouTube, look up Mark Soleil on wood slicing. There's a 4-part series there. If you go to, do we have a tool rest here? Let me see. Here's one right here. If you've been to the one on the 3408, Parfix 3408, the way I came about with this stuff was my daughter was a buyer for Ace Hardware Systems, and I used to get this super glue in these little tubes. It was made in China, right? And the stuff was about 65% pure. And so what it happened is, when you were using it, what did I just do with that piece of hair? It is. When you were using it, it wouldn't cure. So, I said, wow, this is great, because I had a lot of time to play with it before it started polymerizing, right? And then when my source of that dried up, I called and wrote and talked with people from several different manufacturers of super glue, and I found Parson Adhesives. Their home office is up in Rochester Hills, Michigan. This stuff is made out in Evansville, Indiana, and they make about 60 different types of super glue, basically for the automotive industry and for the medical industry. And the stuff for the medical industry is like 100% pure. It has a tremendous shelf life, and it's designed to be odorless. It's an alkoxy formula. It's not a straight ethyl formula. So it has no odor, and it has a built-in time delay so that when surgeons are using this and putting parts together and doing things, they have enough time to get things adjusted and positioned and everything just correctly before it starts to set up. Anyway, when I found this stuff, I started using it, and it was just an absolute miracle. I could not believe it. And so I started using it and using it and using it, you know, doing my big urns and everything with it. You know, it was fabulous, right? One day, one of the guys from the company calls me up, and he says, "Hey, Mark," he says, "What are you using all this super glue for?" And I says, "I'm finishing wood with it." What? Right? So anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this, just a quick demonstration here. I'm just going to take this piece of maple. We're going to do a final cut, and we're going to sand it, and we're going to finish it, and it's going to be gallery ready. This piece will be gallery ready. We'll pass it around, and I'll defy anybody in the room to find a scratch on it. So it's very important when you make your final cuts that you're always slicing wood. Right? This is a scrape. This is a slice. As you can see, if wood comes into a wood turning tool, it is always a scrape and you're raising grain. As soon as you rotate the tool so that the wood is sliding past the blade, right, then it's a slice. All you have in your hand is a farmer's plow. Right? The point goes in, the curl of the plow lifts and turns the dirt. Right? And all the farmer does is stand there. He keeps it on the sideboard. So all you have to do, if you're whether you're using a spindle gouge, bow gouge, or whatever, all you've got to do is stand here, right? You lay the bevel on the wood, right? Get the cut line, and you do what? You direct it where it goes. And allow the tool to do the work. And if anybody wants to come up here and check out the cut, they're welcome to. And as you can see, right, there's almost no sanding required. Now another important thing, which I just noticed right here, you never know how the piece of wood comes through the planer. If you go one way, you've got supporting grain and it's smooth. The other way, you're going up into the broom fibers a little bit and it'll fuzz up. All right, but you can always test that out, and then you make your final cut either way. We'll just do this real quick here. So I've got a roughing gouge. We'll make it go a little farther so that you can see a little bit more distance. We can make a little thing come this way. How do we make a mini hollow form here? And we try never to use our hands in wood turning. We only want our body to make the motion. All right, that'll be good enough. We can do it with a roughing gouge. We can do it with a bowl gouge, a spindle gouge, you know, whatever. The same thing is going to happen. I better not get into that chuck. That wouldn't be swift. Mighty close. Okay, so we've just made this cut. Let's do a little sanding real quick. And we'll get some glue on this thing and go home. Okay, I'll just hit that real quick here with some. I'm just going to start out right there with some 220. Got a little roughness. So we're doing our hollow form or our bowl or whatever, right? We always want to try to cut the wood or slice the wood so that we don't have a lot of sanding to do. I've got a tool impression right there, but at some point you have to make a final cut, and you try to make it so that there's no raised grain. I do workshops all over the country. I do a lot of hands-on training, and once you learn how to make the 5 basic shapes and slice wood, you know, use the 3 basic tools, you can make 99% of everything in wood turning. Get this real, see if we can, I got one line right there. Let me take a look. Okay. Here is what I call a fiber line right there. Let's see if I can get that out real quick. Again, it depends on, even though I was going downhill, I may be going uphill on the grain of the piece of wood. Let me see if I got it out or not. It's not out. I have 2 choices. I'll try to get it out. So here, you'll believe me. You know what's interesting? You know, a lot of people that are doing bowls and stuff. If you learn how to slice the wood, one of the problems that you have is, as soon as you touch like 80 grit to a piece of wood, it takes you about an hour on a bowl just to get to the bottom of those 80 grit scratches that you inflict yourself. Right? So it's important to do some wood slicing. I got this piece of maple not cooperating, but we'll get it. All right, that's getting close. We're going to go to 400 and 800. And come on, get off of there, rubber band. There's some 400. My suggestion for your club is, if people want to use this, right, I would suggest you, as a club, order directly from Parson Adhesives. Get it in case quantities, because number one, it's going to be a lot cheaper, and number two, you can have it and control it right here in the club. I am not affiliated with Parson Adhesives in any way, shape, or form. They pay me to demonstrate for them a little bit, but I'm retired. I don't have any contracts with the company or whatever. So when I go to clubs, they're always asking me, they think I'm out here, making a bunch of money. And that's not what's happening, folks. I see one place right there. We're just going to go on tonight. Let me just see right here. Yep, there's a place right here, and there's a place right here. We're going to go on. Let me go to 800 fresh. I've got a little tear out here. I'm not going to worry about it tonight. What I want you to see is the general finish that you're going to get when you start messing with this stuff. Okay, so we've done we got 400, and now we're going to go to 800. Okay. And there's a spot right here, and there's a spot over here. We're just going to go on because of the time. You're going to always go to 800. Everything that you do in wood turning, right, that I know of, right, I only go to 800 grit. But the secret is, every piece that you finish, if I finish this piece of wood right now, if I put super glue on this right now, you can see every line in it. If I use 15,000 grit, you can see every line in it because they're concentric. You cannot do that. If you remember going to a beach, right, you see the moonlight over the waves, you see a streak of light across the waves because all the waves are lined up. If you look at the back of a CD, you see a streak of light. But guess what? If all I do is this, other than this mark right here where it's torn up, right, if I do this and I do 800 random orbit like this, the last thing I do is always by hand 800 random orbit, you will not be able to see a scratch because the human eyeball cannot see 800 random orbit scratches. Because the scratches are no longer lined up, it diffuses the light. So there's not a reason to go above that. Just look right at this end over here. Okay, so we've done our 800 random orbit. All right. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to put on some Parfix 3408, this ultra thin super glue. It's only 5 centipoids. It will leach into less than 1,000th of an inch crack. It'll saturate the cells, right? And it's just a joy to work with. Now when you put it on, make sure that you slow the lathe down. Acetone will get the super glue off your glasses. Okay. So what I want you to watch is 2 things, right? I want you to watch how I put it on. We're going to flood it as we go along. We're just going to flood it. And we're going to keep the line going. We don't want to have a gap in the glue. No odor.
You mentioned acetone. You said odorless. Does that product have acetone in it? Because some people are allergic to acetone.
That I don't know, but I don't use an acetone accelerator. I use a heptane-based accelerator because it keeps, right? Let me get this. I'm going to wipe all this off because the heptane acetone is actually dissolves the super glue, and if you spray that acetone-based accelerator, is it smoking, stinking? No, I'm working with it, right? Isn't it wonderful? And we want to make sure to take it all completely off the surface. We never want any finish on the surface of our woodworking. Okay, so now when I stop the lathe, what am I going to do? I'm always going to do random orbit. Now I'm at random orbit 4,000 grit, which is paper towels, about 4,000 grit. It's still not smoking, it's still not stinking, still not sticking. You really like the smell? We can. Okay. Usually I'll take it and I'll set this overnight somewhere. Because it's got the time delay in it before it starts to polymerize, then it's going to take longer to cure, right? I like to have it totally crystallized before we buff it. If you buff wet super glue, it's not pretty. Anyway, what I'm going to do with this, just for the sake of tonight, since we don't have any time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, this is a heptane-based accelerator, right? Because again, if you use an acetone or an amine-based accelerator, right, you could, if you get too close and get too much, you actually damage the super glue. And when you're doing this, you always want to stand about 10 or 15 inches away, right? That's it. All you want to do is just put a little bit of accelerator on the surface. Now, this will work with any accelerator, but remember, always stay away. All you want to do is get just a little bit of accelerator on here, because what it does, it starts that molecular vibration that is called polymerization. It generates a lot of heat and everything. Then as it cures, right, it slows down, slows down, slows down. And finally, it becomes what? Acrylic plastic. So we've done that. Let's just take this out of here. Now, remember, just because I'm using it as a finish, it is an ultra, ultra thin. So if I have punky material, guess what? It'll soak right through it, just like a stabilizer, right? They also make a 3460, which is 45 centipoids for the pen makers. If you want to build layers, then it's a little bit thicker. It's like a medium weight. If you are a pen maker, do not use this 3408 on your pen mandrel. It is so thin, it will leach down into your bushings and everything else. And it's not going to be user-friendly that way. Okay, let me go ahead. The next thing I'm going to do is Skip Wilbur used to be the president of the Tri-States Woodturners down in Memphis. He introduced me to this German product called Vonex. Vonex is a rouge designed to polish acrylic plastic, Bakelite, and enamel horn. You can use white diamond, you know, to polish this stuff out if you want, but white diamond was designed to polish lacquer. And if you have like dark walnut or things like that, that white diamond will be in every little pore, right? What? This is a white diamond wheel. It's a white diamond wheel, right? If you're in the be-all system, you know. Did I just bring that block of stuff out? I thought I just had it in my hand. I swear to God, I just brought it out. I just had a bar of it. I don't know what the hell I just did with it. Here, I'll get some out of a box. I thought I just had it in my hand. I just... Okay, just like white diamond, you never want to run this wheel over 1,700 RPMs. I'm at about, I'm at 1238. It's on the low speed, so we'll just polish it out at 1238. Gallery ready. Just pass it around. It's a pretty good finish. Wipe on, wipe off. No further sanding. Buff of Vonex. Send to the gallery. No odor. No hassle. How much more? Do I have any more time? Okay. All right. Then thank you very much. Now, I've got some here. But the best suggestion I have is for you to make a mass order and, get it directly from the factory. It's much better. I've got some, it's pure, so you're going to have, a year and a half. Just keep it in good conditions. I mean, I know people that have had it for 2 years. It's still absolutely fine. But my suggestion is I don't ever buy more than 8-ounce bottles. I would rather have, you know, a new bottle every month than have a shelf, you know, stuff going bad. Another thing you can do, right, the little 2-ounce bottles that they sell, right, your club can order these little bottles, right? What they have is they have a nice little tiny nozzle on them, and they have a steel pin that goes in that little nozzle. Keeps it clean. It's like, that's worth $1 million to me. Well, again, thank you very much. If you ever want to do any workshops, I'll be happy to do workshops with you, hands-on stuff. But anyway, thank you very much. I have some for sale, but I only have limited quantities, so I've got 3 other places to go in my journey here, and I just don't have enough. But if somebody wants some, or if somebody wants to buy like the Vonex bars, right, those are $20. But if you run them on a bandsaw, this bar will last me, which I use all the time. This bar will probably last me 2 years, 2 or 3 years. So if you want to just cut them in half, you know, buddy up, cut them in half or whatever, they'll be good. Yes, that's it. Did you see me use anything else? You can use white diamond on it, but again, if you go on to dark woods or things with pores, that white diamond will stick in there. And this is made specifically for acrylic plastic. All right, thank you very much.